The light on the command bridge of the colony ship Defiance was dim, as Commander Abigail Frost looked at the endless black of space through the main screen. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped the rail in front of her until her knuckles turned white. 5 years since the war ended. 5 years since humanity lost everything. The ship moved slowly toward the edge of what the star maps called Sector 9. Behind her vessel followed the last 20 colony ships carrying the remains of human civilization. Nearly 300,000 souls who had survived the Galactic Accord War. The war that Earth had lost in just 3 months. Abigail turned as her second-in-command approached. "Lieutenant, we are entering Sector 9 now," said Mary Kent. Her voice was flat and tired, like everyone else on the ship. Abigail nodded. "This is it, then. Our new home. Our prison." The Zetherian Dominion had won the war with ease. Their ships were faster, their weapons were stronger, their shields were better. Nothing, humanity could match them. And when Earth surrendered, the terms were simple. Humans would leave their home system forever. They would go to Sector 9, a remote area of space with few resources and fewer habitable planets. The Zetherians and their allies in the Galactic Accord believed this was a slow death sentence. Humans would survive for perhaps a generation, and then fade away. Abigail had other plans. The ships continued deeper into the sector. Finally, they approached a small planet that scans showed could support human life. It was not much to look at. Mostly desert with small oceans and limited vegetation. But it was a start. "We call it New Haven," now said Abigail as the first transport ships began their descent. Over the next month, the humans worked to build their colony. They set up prefab shelters, planted the first crops, established water purification systems. It was hard work, but humans were good at surviving. Abigail spent most days coordinating the growing settlement, and most nights studying the strange star patterns of their new home. The Accord had given them no detailed maps of the sector. Humans were meant to die lost and confused. 3 months after arrival, the food shortages began. Abigail stood in the main square of New Haven as people gathered around her. Their faces showed hunger and fear. The crops were growing too slowly. The emergency rations were running out too quickly. "We need to find more resources," Commander said Elena Wilson, the lead agricultural specialist. "We cannot grow enough food in this soil." The crowd was getting louder, more desperate. Abigail raised her hands to calm them. "We will send out exploration teams tomorrow. There must be better land somewhere on this planet." But the crowd was not satisfied. They pushed forward, angry, afraid. Suddenly, a man rushed toward Abigail with a makeshift weapon. She stepped aside, easily grabbed his arm, and forced him to the ground. Her reflexes were unnaturally fast. The crowd went silent. What they did not know was that before the war, Abigail had been part of a secret military program. Soldiers with enhanced abilities, faster reflexes, sharper senses, better tactical thinking. The program was called Prometheus, and she was one of the few survivors. Home," she said to the crowd, her voice steady. "We will solve this. I promise." That night, Abigail gathered a small team. They would explore beyond the settlement boundaries, looking for anything that might help them survive. Mary Kent would lead the colony. While she was gone, they traveled for 2 days across the desert landscape using the last working rover from the Defiance. The air was thin and hot. The land seemed empty, but Abigail's enhanced senses detected something unusual. Her scanner picked up strange energy readings coming from a deep canyon several miles ahead. "This does not match any known energy pattern," said Nicole Green, the team scientist. "This is not natural and not from any Accord technology I know." The team reached the canyon edge and looked down. The walls dropped nearly 1,000 feet to the bottom. There in the shadows, they could see what looked like an entrance to a cave. But the shape was too regular. Too perfect, it was artificial. The climb down was difficult, but they managed it. As they approached the cave entrance, Abigail felt something unusual, a vibration in the air, a slight change in temperature. Her enhanced senses detected patterns that others could not. The cave was not a cave at all. It was a doorway into a vast structure built into the canyon wall. The architecture was like nothing human or Zetherian. It had angles that seemed wrong, somehow curves that made the eye want to look away. "This is older than the Accord said." Nicole, her voice filled with wonder, much older. They moved deeper into the structure and found themselves in a massive chamber. The walls were covered in symbols and patterns that shifted slightly as if alive. In the center stood a console made of what looked like crystal. Abigail approached it carefully. The others stayed back, uncertain, afraid. She reached out and touched the smooth surface. The world disappeared. She saw stars, entire galaxies. She saw massive ships traveling between worlds. She saw civilizations rise and fall. Across thousands of years, she saw beings of pure energy moving through space without vessels. She saw wars that burned whole systems and peace that lasted millennia. And then she heard words, not in her ears but in her mind. The discarded become the inheritors. The vision ended. Abigail found herself on her knees, gasping for breath. The others rushed to her. "What happened?" asked Nicole. "Are you okay?" Abigail stood slowly, her mind racing with the images she had seen, with the knowledge that had been given to her. "I'm fine," she said. "But we need to bring more people here, more scientists." "More engineers?" Nicole looked confused. "We should tell everyone about this place. This could change everything." "No," said Abigail, her voice firm. "We tell no one yet. Not until we understand what this is. And especially not any Accord monitoring ships that might pass by." She looked around the chamber again, seeing it with new understanding. "The Zetherians gave us this sector to die," she said quietly. "But they did not know what was hidden here. They gave us the keys to our future." Abigail touched the console once more. This time there was no vision, but the crystal began to glow softly, illuminating symbols on the walls, symbols that she somehow now understood. "This sector isn't our prison," she said. "It's going to be our empire." 8 years had passed since humans were exiled to Sector 9. On the surface, they appeared to struggle for survival. Their settlements looked crude, their technology primitive. Any Zetherian monitoring vessels that passed through saw exactly what humans wanted them to see: a dying race clinging to existence in a harsh environment. The truth was very different. Deep beneath the surface of New Haven, Haley Burton sat at her communications station. She was 29 years old, born on Earth, but raised mostly in space after the war. Her fingers moved rapidly over the control panel as she coordinated messages between 20 hidden human outposts throughout the sector. Status report on Shadow Fleet. She asked. A young man at a nearby station responded. All vessels maintaining stealth protocols. The Zetherian patrol passed within 5,000 kilometers of the Artemis, but did not detect it. Haley nodded. "Good, tell Captain Andrea to maintain position until the patrol leaves the system." The communication center was a marvel of human ingenuity, combined with precursor technology. It allowed instant communication across the entire sector, using quantum entanglement principles that Maggie Vance's science team had reverse-engineered from the ancient ruins. More importantly, it was completely undetectable to Zetherian sensors. Haley checked the status of another operation on her screen. Vice Admiral Linda Carter was leading the most ambitious mission yet. A diplomatic contact with the Morrigan, a reptilian species that had suffered under Zetherian rule for centuries. The mission was risky but necessary. Humans needed allies in another part of the hidden facility. Susan Blackwell supervised the terraforming project. She stood before a massive window overlooking a test chamber the size of several football fields. Inside it, a barren landscape was slowly transforming. Plants grew from previously toxic soil. Water pooled in newly formed lakes. The air composition changed, becoming breathable. "This is the third successful simulation," Susan said to her team. "If the large-scale implementation works as well, we'll be able to terraform 3 more planets in the sector within 2 years. One of her assistants looked concerned. "But the energy requirements?" Susan smiled. "That's already solved. The precursor technology uses ambient stellar radiation. It's actually more efficient at scale. The terraforming project was perhaps their greatest achievement. Using adapted precursor technology, they had already made 3 previously uninhabitable planets in the sector livable. This had tripled the territory under human control, all while maintaining the illusion of a struggling species confined to a few small colonies. Meanwhile, in a system, at the edge of Sector 9, Vice Admiral Linda Carter prepared for her meeting with the Morrigan ambassador. Her ship, the Midnight Sun, was hidden in the shadow of a dying star, where sensor interference provided additional cover. Linda was 45 years old, a veteran of the war against the Zetherians. She had lost an arm in the final battle for Earth. Now she had a prosthetic limb enhanced with precursor technology. It looked like ordinary metal, but contained capabilities beyond anything the Accord races had developed. "The Morrigan ship is approaching," said her tactical officer. Linda nodded on screen. She said, the view screen showed a sleek vessel with an organic-looking design typical of Morrigan architecture. It moved cautiously, clearly, concerned about being detected by Zetherian patrols. "Open a secure channel," Linda ordered. The face that appeared on the screen was reptilian with amber eyes and scaled skin. The Morrigan ambassador Screeth looked at Linda with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "You risk much meeting with us, human," said the ambassador. "The Zetherians would punish us both if they discovered this contact." Linda kept her expression neutral. "We have mutual interests, ambassador. Your people suffer under Zetherian rule. Our people were sentenced to die in this forgotten sector. Yet here we are." The ambassador tilted his head. "What do you propose?" Linda pressed a control on her chair and a small compartment opened. She removed a device about the size of her palm. It was crystalline with strange patterns that shifted and moved across its surface. "This is a small sample of technology we have developed," she said. "It can disable Zetherian shields without being detected. We offer it as a gesture of good faith." The Morrigan ambassador leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the device. "How did you create such technology?" "The Zetherians monitor all technological development among Accord races. They don't monitor us," said Linda. "They believe we're barely surviving, we're beneath their notice." She placed the device in a small transfer chamber, which she then sealed. The chamber would move through the vacuum between the ships, carrying its precious cargo. "We propose an alliance." Ambassador Linda continued. "The Zetherians believe they're untouchable, that their power is absolute. We know different, and with allies we can prove it." The transfer chamber reached the Morrigan ship. After several minutes of examination, the ambassador spoke again. "This technology, it is like nothing I have seen. How did humans develop this in just 8 years?" Linda smiled. "We had help, ambassador, but not from any living race." She let that statement hang in the air for a moment. "We know the Accord is fracturing, ambassador. Your people and others grow tired of Zetherian dominance. We offer a third path. The Morrigans seem to consider this. We will test this device. If it functions as you claim, we will speak again." It was as much as Linda could hope for, a tentative first step toward alliance back in New Haven. Admiral Abigail Frost reviewed reports from across the sector. Susan Blackwell's terraforming project was ahead of schedule. Maggie Vance's research team had made new breakthroughs in precursor weapons technology. Haley Burton's communications network functioned flawlessly. And now Linda Carter's diplomatic mission showed promise. They had accomplished so much in 8 years. All while the Zetherians remained blind to their activities, Abigail moved to the large strategic display that dominated the command center. It showed the entire sector and beyond. Human-controlled areas glowed blue Zetherian territory, red potential allies in various shades of green. The door opened, and Maggie Vance entered. She looked excited. "Admiral," she said, "we found something new at the ruins on Centauria 4. It's some kind of star map, but it shows systems and travel routes that don't match any known Accord star charts." Abigail studied the projection. "This could be ancient routes that have been forgotten, or something else entirely," Maggie replied. "We think these might be paths specifically designed for precursor technology, shortcuts through space, if she was right. This would change everything. Humans could move beyond their sector. Undetected, establish bases, build strength, all before the Zetherians realized what was happening." Their planning was interrupted by an urgent message from Haley Admiral. "We have a situation," she reported. "The Zetherians have increased patrols along the sector border. They've detected unusual energy signatures from our terraforming project on Osiris, so..." Abigail felt a cold certainty settle over her. This moment had to come eventually. They had always known they couldn't hide forever. "How many ships?" asked Abigail. "5 now," replied Haley. "But more are being diverted to the sector. It appears the Zetherian High Command has dispatched Commander Vexlar to investigate." Vexlar was known to all of them. A ruthless Zetherian commander who had led the final assault on Earth. He was thorough, methodical, and utterly without mercy. Abigail considered their options. They had planned for this, but not so soon. The diplomatic missions were just beginning. The new weapon systems were not fully tested. She made her decision. "Send word to all outposts and ships," she ordered. "Maintain stealth protocols, but prepare for revelation protocol. The time for hiding is coming to an end." She turned to Maggie. "Continue your research on the star maps. We may need those routes sooner than we thought," as the orders went out across the hidden network of human settlements and ships. Abigail looked again at the strategic display they had built. So much created a new civilization. From the ashes of defeat, the Zetherians had given humans Sector 9 as a prison, a place to die slowly and be forgotten. Instead, it had become the foundation of a new human empire. Now, as Zetherian ships approached, the truth would begin to emerge. Abigail watched on the display as the first wave of vessels entered the sector. "Let them come," she said, her voice cold and determined. "But only the first wave leaves alive." 3 years passed since Abigail Frost discovered the alien ruins on New Haven. The human settlements had grown stronger, but they kept up appearances of struggle and hardship. Anytime Zetherian monitoring ships passed through the sector, they saw only what humans wanted them to see: poor colonies fighting to survive in a hostile environment. But below the surface, everything had changed. Dr. Margaret Vance stood in the main research chamber of what they now called the precursor site. Her team of 20 scientists worked at various stations around the room studying artifacts and technology, recovered from similar sites across the sector. Maggie, as everyone called her, had lost her husband and 2 children during the war. They had been on a civilian transport trying to escape Earth when a Zetherian cruiser destroyed it. Now she focused all her energy on understanding the ancient technology. The work kept the memories at bay. She brushed her red hair from her face and studied the holographic display in front of her. "The interface is responding again," she said to her assistant. "The energy patterns are stabilizing." For years they had been trying to understand how the precursor technology worked. Their first breakthrough came when they realized the technology responded to human neural patterns. In fact, it seemed specifically designed to be used by human brains or something very similar. Maggie placed her hand on a crystalline device about the size of a book. The surface glowed at her touch and projected a complex 3-dimensional diagram into the air. "We still don't understand exactly what this is designed to do," she said. "But it's clearly some kind of energy manipulation system." Her assistant nodded. "We found similar devices at the sites, on both moons. The architecture is identical." Maggie was about to respond when her communication device chimed. She answered and heard Abigail Frost's voice now. "Admiral Frost, after a formal military restructuring. We need you at command immediately. Maggie Diane has made contact with a Zetherian vessel." Maggie felt her heart race. 10 minutes later, she arrived at the hidden command center buried 100 feet beneath New Haven. Admiral Frost stood before a large tactical display showing the border of Sector 9. A small human ship labeled Phantom was positioned near a larger vessel marked as Zetherian Captain. Diane Wheeler had been patrolling the borders in the Phantom for months. The ship looked like a barely functioning scavenger vessel on the outside, but inside it carried some of the most advanced technology humans had developed using precursor science. "The Zetherian vessel is a monitoring ship," said Admiral Frost. "They come through every few months to check on us, make sure we're still dying slowly." Everyone in the room knew the routine. The Zetherians never stayed long. They scanned the main settlements, confirmed that humans were struggling, and left satisfied that their sentence was being carried out. But this time is different. Continued Frost. Captain Wheeler reports that the Zetharian ship is moving deeper into the sector than usual. They appear to be conducting more detailed scans. A woman stepped forward from the tactical station. "We need to maintain our cover, Admiral," she said. "Our secondary colonies on the outer planets aren't disguised as well as New Haven. If they scan those..." Admiral Frost nodded. "I know, Lara. But this might also be an opportunity." She touched a control on the display and Captain Diane's face appeared on the main screen. Her dark skin was illuminated by the soft blue lights of her ship's bridge. "Captain Wheeler." "What is your assessment?" she asked. "The Zetharian ship is a light cruiser," Diane replied. "Minimal weapons, standard scanning equipment crew of about 20. They don't expect any resistance. They don't think we're a threat." "What about the prototype?" asked Admiral Frost. Diane smiled slightly. "We have it aboard and ready. It hasn't been tested in field conditions, but all simulations indicate it should work." The prototype was a device reverse-engineered from precursor technology. It created a localized distortion in gravitational fields that could disable other ships without destroying them. Maggie stepped forward. "This is too risky," she said. "We don't know if the prototype will work as expected. And if it doesn't, the Zetharians will know we've been developing technology." Admiral Frost considered this for a moment. She looked around the room at the faces of her senior staff. They had worked for 3 years preparing strengthening humanity while maintaining the illusion of weakness. "Sometimes you have to take a risk," she said. Finally, "Captain Wheeler, you are authorized to use the prototype. If it works, capture the Zetharian vessel intact. We need their navigational data and any intelligence they might have." Diane nodded. "I understand. Admiral Phantom out." The screen returned to the tactical display. Everyone watched as the small human ship moved closer to the Zetharian cruiser. "Do you think this is wise?" Admiral asked Lara Chen, the chief of security. If this goes wrong, Abigail Frost had learned to trust her enhanced instincts. They had kept her alive during the war and led her to the precursor site. The same instincts now told her this was the right move. "Yes," she said. "We need to know more about what's happening beyond our sector. The Zetharians have kept us isolated for years. It's time we got some answers." On the display, the Phantom had moved within range of the Zetharian ship. Suddenly, a pulse of energy spread out from the human vessel. It wasn't visible to normal eyes, but the sensors detected it as a ripple in space-time. The Zetharian ship stopped moving. "It's working," said someone. 2 hours later, Captain Diane Wheeler stood in the command center. Her report was better than anyone had hoped. "The prototype worked perfectly," she said. "The Zetharian ship lost all power. Their crew is unconscious but unharmed. We boarded and downloaded their entire database, including recent updates from across the galactic accord." Admiral Frost nodded. "Good work, Captain. What did you do with the ship and crew?" "We moved them to the far edge of the sector," Diane replied. "When they wake up, they'll find their systems had a massive failure. They lost some time but have no evidence of what really happened. Their logs show a power surge, nothing more." Maggie was already reviewing the downloaded data on a separate terminal. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. "Admiral, you need to see this," she said. "This changes everything." The room fell silent as Admiral Frost moved to Maggie's side. The data showed what they had suspected for years. The Galactic Accord was not as unified as it appeared. Several species, particularly the reptilian, Morrigan, were growing restless under Zetharian control. Political fractures were forming, but that wasn't the most important discovery. "According to these records," said Maggie. Her voice filled with excitement. "Sector 9 wasn't just a random area chosen. For our exile, the Zetharians gave it to us because none of the Accord species wanted it. Ancient legends warned all spacefaring races to avoid this region." Admiral Frost leaned closer to the screen. "What kind of legends?" Maggie scrolled through the data. "Most are vague. Something about guardians and inheritors. But the Zetharians dismissed it all as superstition. They thought it was perfect for us. A sector no one wanted for a species. They wanted to forget." Abigail remembered the words from her vision. The discarded become the inheritors. The connection was clear now. The precursors had been waiting for humans. All this time. "We need to accelerate our plans," said Admiral Frost. "Call the council. We meet in 1 hour." Later that night, the Human Leadership Council gathered in the secure chamber beneath New Haven. Admiral Frost stood before them outlining what they had learned and what it meant the Zetherians believe we're barely surviving. She said, "But we've been building, studying, growing, stronger. Now we know the Accord is fracturing. This gives us an opportunity." For what, asked one council member. "We can't fight the entire Accord," not yet, replied Frost. "But we can find allies. The Morrigan and others who chafe under Zetherian rule. And we have technology no one else can use." She looked around the room at the faces of those who would shape humanity's future. "They gave us this sector to die," she said. "But instead we found our strength. When the time comes, we will emerge from Sector 9 not as refugees but as a power, and the galaxy will never be the same." 6 months after the encounter with Commander Vexlar, the political landscape of the galaxy had transformed the Galactic Accord. Once the dominant power structure across known space was fracturing, news of human technological superiority spread. Quickly, several species led by the reptilian Morrigan formally recognized human sovereignty over Sector 9, now called the Nova Imperium. By its inhabitants on New Haven, the human capital had been transformed. The crude settlement that once served as a cover was replaced by a gleaming city of crystalline towers and sweeping arches. Precursor technology blended with human design, creating architecture unlike anything seen in the galaxy. In the newly constructed Concordance Hall, Elizabeth Grant stood before representatives from 20 alien civilizations. The former junior diplomat was now humanity's chancellor. She had been chosen not for military prowess, but for her vision of the future. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly. "Through the vast chamber 8 years ago, humanity was exiled to this sector. We were meant to die forgotten and alone." She paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. Some, like the Morrigan, were old enemies from the war. Others were species humans, had never encountered before the exile. All were now potential allies. Instead, we discovered the legacy of the precursors. Elizabeth continued their technology, their knowledge, their vision for the galaxy. "We have harnessed that legacy, not for domination, but for partnership." The Morrigan ambassador Screeth rose, his scaled form impressive in ceremonial armor. "The Zetherians gave you nothing, and you built an empire that gives you the right to rule." Elizabeth shook her head. "No, ambassador. That gives us the responsibility to lead differently. The Zetherians rule through force. We offer another path. Cooperation, alliance, mutual protection." As the diplomatic conference continued, Admiral Abigail Frost and Dr. Maggie Vance stood in the deepest level of the precursor ruins where it had all begun. 8 years earlier, nearly a decade of study and discovery had finally revealed the truth about the ancient civilization whose technology they had harnessed. The holographic display showed strand after strand of genetic code. Maggie pointed to specific sequences. "These markers appear in both precursor DNA fragments and in human genetic material," she explained. "They don't appear in any other species in the Accord." Abigail studied the display. "So the precursors are our ancestors?" "Not exactly," Maggie replied. "More like we share a common ancestor, or perhaps they modified early humans genetically. The timeline is difficult to establish, but this explains why humans can interface with their technology when no other species can." The discovery answered so many questions. Why the precursor technology responded to human neural patterns. Why the sector containing their ruins had been given to humans, a seemingly cruel coincidence that turned out to be the salvation of the species. "What happened to them?" asked Abigail. Maggie activated another display, this one showing energy patterns that shifted and flowed like living things. "According to our analysis, they didn't die out. They evolved beyond physical form." The implications were staggering. An entire civilization that had transcended matter itself, becoming beings of pure energy and consciousness, perhaps still existing in some form. Humans could not yet comprehend. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication. Admiral Frost said a voice. The Zetherians have launched a major assault on the Nova Imperium. They have committed their entire armada. Abigail was not surprised. The Zetherians would not accept the new reality without a fight. It was their nature. Their entire civilization was built on the concept of dominance. Prepare all defensive systems, she ordered. Alert Vice Admiral Carter to engage the Zetherian fleet at the edge of the sector. The largest space battle in galactic history was about to begin. Vice Admiral Linda Carter stood on the bridge of the flagship Ascendant's human vessels, formed a defensive line at the edge of what had once been Sector 9. Linda had fought the Zetherians before during the War for Earth. That had been a desperate last stand of a technologically inferior species. This would be very different. The Zetherian armada appeared massive and imposing. Nearly 1,000 warships arranged in their traditional attack formation, their hulls gleaming, with golden symbols of the Dominion. All ships prepared to engage, said Linda, her voice steady. The human fleet was smaller. Only 200 vessels, but each carried weapons and defensive systems built from precursor technology. They had advantages the Zetherians could not imagine. The first Zetherian ships opened fire. Energy weapons lashed out across the void of space. Human vessels responded with their own weapons, beams of blue energy that cut through Zetherian shields. The battle seemed evenly matched at first. The Zetherians had numbers and experience, the humans had superior technology. But neither side could gain a decisive advantage on New Haven, Chancellor. Elizabeth Grant received updates from the battle. She stood in the command center. With Maggie Vance and other senior officials, it's time, she said. Admiral Frost, who was coordinating the defense from New Haven, nodded in agreement. Elizabeth moved to a control panel that only she and Admiral Frost had access to. It had been built using the purest form of precursor technology. Its surface was not metal or crystal, but something in between that responded to human touch in ways that defied explanation. She placed her hand on the panel and spoke clearly. Activate the network. Across the Nova Imperium precursor defense systems awakened fully for the first time in millennia. On planets throughout the former Sector 9, massive energy projectors emerged from hidden locations. Some had been discovered and adapted by humans. Others had lain dormant waiting for this moment. In space around the battling fleets, rings of energy began to form, connecting in complex patterns. The Zetherian ships suddenly found themselves enveloped in fields of blue light. Their weapons went silent. Their engines stopped responding. Vice Admiral Carter watched in awe as the ancient defense network activated. The Zetherians were not destroyed. Their ships remained intact, but they were completely neutralized, held in stasis, unable to fight or flee. A voice came through her communication system. This is Chancellor Grant, she said. The network is stable. All Zetherian vessels are contained. The battle was over without a single additional shot being fired. 3 days later, the Zetherian Supreme Leader was brought to New Haven, the first time in recorded history that the head of the Dominion had left Zetherian space. The gesture itself was an acknowledgement of how completely the balance of power had shifted. In a private meeting, Chancellor Grant and Admiral Frost met with the Supreme Leader. The Zetherian ruler was tall even for his species, his skin a deeper blue than most, with elaborate markings of rank covering his face. You have defeated our armada, he said, his voice deep and resonant. Yet, you destroyed none of our ships, killed none of our warriors. Why? Elizabeth looked to Abigail, then back to the Supreme Leader. Because we are not you, she said simply. We did not exile you to die. We will not destroy you. To win. The Supreme Leader was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been puzzling the Zetherian leadership. Why did you give humans Sector 9? We had surveyed it, found nothing of value. Why that sector specifically? Admiral Frost leaned forward. Because of the legends, she said. The ancient warnings about guardians and inheritors. Your people dismissed them as superstition. For the first time, the Supreme Leader showed emotion. A flicker of unease crossed his face. The precursors, he said. So the prophecies were true. Elizabeth and Abigail exchanged glances. What prophecies? Asked Elizabeth. The Zetharian leader seemed to consider whether to answer. Finally, he spoke. There are texts older than the Accord, older than Zetharian civilization itself. They spoke of a species that would one day discover the precursor legacy. If that species were the right inheritors, they would save the galaxy. If not, they would end it. He looked at the two human leaders. We believed those were merely stories, but some in our ancient councils feared what would happen if humans ever found the precursor technology. So when your species was defeated, it was decided to send you to Sector 9A test, said Abigail. Understanding dawning. To see if we were these inheritors, and if we were not, we would simply die there forgotten. The Supreme Leader nodded. You have your answer now, said Elizabeth. We found the technology, we mastered it, and we chose not to destroy our enemies when we had the chance. In the following weeks, a new order began to take shape. Human representatives met with delegations from across the galaxy. The Nova Imperium established diplomatic relations with dozens of species. Treaties were signed. Trade routes opened. The Zetharians reluctantly acknowledged human sovereignty. They had little choice. Their military power had been exposed as inadequate against precursor technology. Their political dominance was broken. On the observation deck of the newly completed Tower of Ascension in New Haven, Chancellor, Elizabeth Grant looked out over the glittering expanse of the city at night. Admiral Abigail Frost joined her. 10 years ago we were refugees, she said. Now we lead a stellar empire. It doesn't seem real sometimes. Abigail smiled. It was always possible. The Zetharians never understood humans. Our adaptability, our determination. Even without the precursor technology, we would have found a way to survive. Elizabeth nodded. Do you think we fulfilled our purpose? She asked. The one the precursors intended. For us, are we the inheritors they were waiting for? Abigail looked out at the city at the evidence of how far humanity had come in such a short time. They gave us this sector to die in, she said instead. Commander Vexlar stood on the bridge of the Zetharian warship Dominance. His pale blue skin was marked with the ceremonial scars of his rank. His black eyes revealed no emotion as he studied the holographic display of Sector 9. The human sector, he said with quiet contempt. They should have died out years ago. His second-in-command, a female Zetharian named Calry, approached. We are detecting unusual energy signatures from several planets within the sector, she said. Particularly from their main settlement. Vexlar nodded. Something is happening here. The High Command was right to send us. The Zetharian fleet moved deeper into Sector 9, 5 warships, each capable of destroying an entire human colony with ease. They expected to find desperate humans scraping by on failing colonies. Instead, they found something that made even Vexlar pause. The colonies appeared to be struggling on the surface. The buildings were crude, the technology primitive. But the sensors on the Dominance detected anomalies, energy readings that didn't match the visible infrastructure, population densities that didn't align with food production capabilities. Something is hidden here, said Vexlar. I want a ground team at their main settlement. This New Haven, prepare a shuttle among. The Zetharian crew was a human woman, Kate Monroe. She appeared to be a collaborator, a human who had defected to the Zetharians years ago. In truth, she was a deep cover operative for Admiral Frost, planted years earlier in preparation for this moment, Commander. Vexlar said, Kate speaking the harsh Zetharian language perfectly. I volunteer to join the ground team. My knowledge of human behavior may be useful. Vexlar considered her. She had served the Dominion well for years, providing valuable intelligence about human psychology and potential resistance. Her loyalty seemed beyond question. Very well, he said. You will accompany the team. Lieutenant Drax will lead. Kate bowed her head in the Zetharian manner. Thank you, Commander. An hour later, Kate stood with 5 Zetharians in the main square of New Haven. Humans moved about their business, looking appropriately fearful and subservient when Zetharians passed. The settlement appeared exactly as it should, a struggling colony, barely surviving in a hostile environment. Lieutenant Drax consulted his scanner. The energy readings are stronger here, but I cannot pinpoint the source. Kate pointed to a nearby building. That is their main power center, she said. Perhaps we should begin there. She knew her role perfectly. Guide the Zetherians away from critical installations while appearing to help feed false information, while seeming cooperative. Her entire life for the past 5 years had been preparation for this moment. The Zetherian team moved toward the building. Kate had indicated it was in fact a decoy designed to be discovered. A power facility with technology just advanced enough to raise questions, but not advanced enough to reveal the truth. As they walked through the settlement, Kate sent a coded signal. Using a neural implant hidden beneath her skin, Admiral Frost would now know exactly where the Zetherians were and where they were headed. The inspection continued for hours. The Zetherians becoming increasingly puzzled. The settlement showed all the expected signs of human struggle. Yet their instruments detected anomalies they could not explain. Lieutenant Drax grew frustrated. I know they are hiding something, he said to Kate. But what? And how? Kate maintained her role. I am as confused as you are, Lieutenant, she replied. Humans are resourceful, but they lack the capability for true deception on this scale. The words were carefully chosen. A subtle insult to Zetherian intelligence. The arrogance of the Dominion made them vulnerable. They believed so completely in their superiority that they could not imagine humans outsmarting them. The deception might have continued perfectly, if not for an unexpected event. A young human child no more than 6 years old ran past the Zetherian team, chasing what appeared to be a simple toy. But the toy was no ordinary plaything. It hovered using anti-gravity technology far beyond what the Zetherians believed humans possessed. Lieutenant Drax moved with shocking speed, grabbing the toy from midair. He examined it, his expression darkening. This is advanced technology, he said. Where did this come from? The child looked frightened. I made it, she said. My mommy helped. Kate tried to intervene. It is just a toy, she said. Perhaps salvaged from Accord technology and repurposed. But Lieutenant Drax was not convinced. He activated his communicator. Commander, we have evidence of technological deception. On the Dominance, Commander Vexlar received the report. His suspicions confirmed. He made an immediate decision. Begin bombardment of the settlement, he ordered. Clearly the humans have been hiding their capabilities. In New Haven, alarms began to sound. Kate abandoned her cover, running toward the child and pulling her to safety. From her command center deep below the surface, Admiral Abigail Frost watched as the Zetherian ships moved into attack position. This was not how she had planned for the revelation to occur, but plans rarely survived contact with reality. Implement protocol. Lazarus, she ordered. Across New Haven, hidden systems began to activate. The seemingly primitive building shifted, revealing advanced defense platforms. The dirt streets split open as missile launchers rose from underground bunkers. The frightened colonists transformed, dropping their fearful posture and moving with military precision to battle stations. In orbit, the apparently decrepit human ships suddenly powered up with weapon systems that blazed with blue energy. The Zetherian vessels had positioned themselves perfectly for the trap, believing they faced no threat. Most shocking to the Zetherians, massive structures began to rise from beneath the surfaces of supposedly uninhabited planets throughout the sector. Shipyards, defense platforms, manufacturing centers that had been built in secret for years. All powered by precursor technology. All coming online at once. On the bridge of the Dominance, Commander Vexlar watched in disbelief as his tactical display filled with new contacts, human vessels appearing from nowhere, defensive systems activating on planets his people had surveyed and declared barren. What is this? He demanded. The first Zetherian ship exploded as a concentrated beam of energy cut through its shields and hull. The beam had come from what appeared to be a simple communications array on New Haven's surface. Now revealed as a weapon of incredible power, the Dominance rocked as something hit its shields. Vexlar grabbed a support rail to steady himself. Return fire, he ordered. Target there, main settlement. But the Dominance never got the chance to fire. 3 more human vessels decloaked around it, their weapons already charged. Beams of blue energy lanced out, cutting through the Zetherian shields as if they weren't there. In less than 15 minutes, the battle was over. 4 Zetherian ships destroyed. The Dominance captured its crew, including Commander Vexlar. Taken prisoner, Abigail Frost stood in the detention center, looking at Commander Vexlar through the energy field that contained him. He stared back, his black eyes showing something humans rarely saw in Zetherians: uncertainty. "How is this possible?" he asked. 8 years ago, you were a defeated species, refugees. We gave you nothing." Abigail smiled. "You gave us everything. Commander A sector no one wanted. A place forgotten by the Accord. A prison that turned out to be filled with treasures you never discovered." 2 guards brought Kate Monroe into the room. She had changed from her Zetherian uniform into a human military. Her true rank lieutenant commander now displayed on her shoulders. The spy said, Vexlar, his voice cold. "How long since before I joined your crew?" replied Kate. 5 years of deep cover. Now finally ended. Vexlar looked back at Admiral Frost. "Why reveal yourselves now? You could have continued building your strength in secret." Abigail considered the question. It was fair. The revelation had not gone exactly as planned, but perhaps it was better this way, because exile wasn't our punishment. "Commander," she said, "it was our opportunity, and now it's time for the galaxy to learn what we've become." She turned to her officers. "Prepare a ship for Commander Vexlar. He will be returning to Zetherian space." Vexlar looked surprised. "You are releasing me?" Abigail nodded. "You will deliver a message to the Zetherian High Command, acknowledge human sovereignty over Sector 9, and we will establish peaceful relations. Continue to view us as enemies and you will face technology you cannot comprehend." As the Zetherian commander was led away, he asked one final question. "Why did you wait so long to reveal yourselves? You clearly had this capability for some time." Abigail smiled again, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Because exile wasn't our punishment," she repeated. "It was our opportunity." Hours later, as the small Zetherian shuttle carried Commander Vexlar back to Accord space, he reviewed what he had seen. The humans had accomplished in 8 years what most species took centuries to develop. Their technology was unlike anything in the Accord. Some of it seemed to defy the known laws of physics, and they had done it all while convincing the Zetherians they were barely surviving. The implications were clear. The balance of power in the galaxy was about to shift dramatically. In Sector 9, now being renamed by its human inhabitants, Admiral Abigail Frost stood in the command center watching as defensive systems were fully activated throughout human space. The time for hiding had ended. The time for expansion was beginning. "They gave us a sector to die in," she said to her assembled officers. "Now it's our new empire."